Greetings and salutations. Welcome to my channel.
Master of none.
A master.
Rambling song.
Do.
Yeah.
I'm your host, DC Roberts, and today I actually try to record this video like 3-4 times. I'm gonna go over the book From the Shadows by Juan José Millás. It's a really good fucking book. Yeah, it's really good actually. I also something else I wanted to say. There was something else. I feel like it was fairly important. I really do. I feel like it was fairly important. Um, but I guess anyways, just want to let you guys know that there would be spoilers in this video. I'm going to talk about the book, the things like certain parts I liked about the book. We'll go ahead and read the back of the cover. That's the only point in which I'm not going to give spoilers. So again, you've been warned. This video will have spoilers. I'm not going to go into every single detail about the book. I'm going to talk about things I like that the writer did, certain things that I feel like comparisons that I made to different things, outside sources that the writer probably did not intend to do. And then I'm also going to go into a little bit about this book. As you know, as I stated in my intro video, I am seeking employment in narrative design, and this book has definitely been able to change my methodology in terms of writing short stories and novels and long fiction and making it more so formatted for narrative design, the interactive media world. I do feel like that this is an extremely cool source for storytelling, causing the audience to be part of the storytelling medium. So I think that's actually a really cool thing, and I would like to get involved in it. So the back of the book. Let me holler at you real quick. This guy, he's about to be all up in your ear. Laid off from his job, Damian Lobo obsessively imagines himself as a celebrity being interviewed on TV. After committing an act of petty theft at an antique market, he finds himself trapped inside a wardrobe and delivered to the seemingly idyllic home of a husband, wife, and their internet-addicted teenage daughter. There, he sneaks from the shadows to serve as an invisible butler, becoming deeply and dastrously involved with his unknowing host family. Every thread of the plot is ingeniously tied together, creating a potent admixture of parable, love story, and thriller. Mia's masterfully, Mia, Mia masterfully reveals the everyday as innately surreal as he renders the unbelievable tangible and trivial fantastical and full of dark humor. I'm sorry, I couldn't take myself serious on that last part. So yeah, that's the back of the book, and the reason why I say that the back of the book is not a good book or is not a good representation of the book is because this story, there is no love story. Um, I guess you can say it's a one-sided stalker love story, but that's the closest you get to a love story. As for the teenage daughter, we never see her on the fucking computer. Sorry, I'm supposed to be looking at you guys. We never see her on a fucking computer. We just know she has a computer. For the most part, we know that she's in front of like a TV with her dad. I think when you read the back of the book, you get these false ideas. And so honestly, for me, as a writer, I don't really it's very rare that I'll read for necessarily enjoyment or entertainment purposes. You want to be entertained in what you're studying, but because I am studying, there is a level of research I do before reading the book. I see the themes of the book, what the book talks about. I like to know spoilers. I know, I don't, or actually, I don't mind spoilers because I know that the plot isn't where I'm going for the bulk of my information as a writer. I'm going into understanding how the writer makes that plot more engaging. What does he do outside of the plot? What craft techniques does he do or he or she do to provide a better overall storytelling? And one thing that Mias has going for him in this particular book is actually the interview. The interview is a really important part of the story. So when we first meet Damien, he's like sitting at a coffee shop or something inside of a market. Um, and he's just sitting there chilling, but we don't know he's in a coffee shop. We don't even know he's like just sitting down. It starts off inside of the mental interview he's having with O'Kane, and it's really well done. The transitions back and forth between the transition back and forth between Damian Lobo and O'Kane as they have this back and forth, this interview, and then coming in and out of his mental interview in the real world is really, really well done. The transitions are seamless, and I think that's one of the things that I really picked up on was the amount, or because as a writer, like simple things like that, yeah, I guess you could say they're easy to do, but to do it consistently and smoothly where the reader isn't disengaged from the reading is that's tiring. That is extremely tiring. Making certain that everything is just smooth and neat and doesn't distract the reader, doesn't make them pop out and be like, what the fuck is happening? That kind of writing is extremely important, and that kind of writing takes a lot of time, is very taxing mentally. I remember a novel that I was first working on. I actually still haven't completed. I hope it's going to be my I forget the name of it. It's called the Magnum Opus. There was this scene where it's actually the first fantasy novel that I've been working on. There's a scene where they're at a swamp, and the main character has to protect this little girl, and there's a fight between like this huge ass salamander who has like a razor sharp tongue. And that scene, writing it in a way where the reader is engaged in the action of the story, where the reader doesn't come back and be like, how is he moving? Certain things that can easily disengage the reader, where you have to reread something because you didn't really get a great idea of what happened. It takes it took me like a day or two to write just a page of that. Um, and it's very taxing. So I definitely to maintain that throughout the entire, and that's something you should do. A good writer will be able to maintain that throughout the entire story, but to do that and knowing when to and making certain, like I can only imagine the amount of edits. And if he didn't have any editors, I'm trying to get to that level. So definitely one of the things I appreciate about that story. Um, and then um how creepy the guy was. Damian Lobo, there's you like him, he's a good guy, but there's something wrong with him. There's something wrong with that dude. It's one of those things where it's like he's a very likable character. He's very honest. He doesn't mean harm upon people. He doesn't mean harm upon people, yet he's in this house moving about. No one knows he's there. Very much an invasion of privacy. Um, and I think that that's even though that's the case, it's still really well done. So the very first chapter was probably my least favorite chapter. Um, you're just now trying to get into the book. You're still, you're trying to get the dynamic that Damian Lobo has with his mental self and his mental reality, where he's on a celebrity talk show. He's being interviewed, and you're getting the idea that, and then you see how he interacts with the real world, which he plagues with the concept of a capitalist society and how it's affecting him. He was just laid off and all this stuff, and his escape is this interview. Um, And you start to understand how O'Kane works. O'Kane has this, he has a physical embodiment. Like he has a complete character. It's not just like a mental thing, like, oh, I'm thinking about this. No, you see O'Kane. You see his audience. It goes down to the finest detail of the having the producer speaking in his ear set to tell him what to ask and when to ask it. Um to win his pauses just so that he could cause more emphasis on whatever's being said. He knows when to cut the audience off to ask another question or when to move on because it might ruin ratings, or just keep it there in that moment. Let the laughs go, let them continue laughing until it quiet down. Not forcing anyone to quiet, but just letting it come down naturally, and then punch them again with another, hard hitting question that will get those laughs going again. Um, it's really well done. It's beautifully written. So I thought it was dope. In that same chapter, when you're starting to get to understand his Damian Lobos and O'Kane's relationship, you also have this part where he talks about his sister. He's very specific. Basically, his parents didn't think they would have a kid, and so they adopt a child, a Chinese child. Um, and no, I'm not just like throwing it in. No, they're very specific. A Chinese child, and like a year later, they end up having Damien on accident, and he always felt like they preferred their adopted child. And Damien even talks about like how it could be because they actually spent money on her to buy her, so now they feel like it's worth more. And then like they would try to do things to make her feel more comfortable, like getting a Asian, because I don't know if the maid was actually Chinese or not, but they actually get an Asian maid to show the oldest daughter like, oh yeah, there's actually people like you out there. But then Damien was the one who was closer to her, and because Damien was so close to the maid, and the older sister wasn't, they got rid of her. But Damien and the maid were so close that she would even come to Damien's preschool to wish him happy birthday and things like that. um yeah, it's like little things like that, or very specific things like that. He also goes really well into like things in childhood that people don't, and that's also another thing that the interview does really well. It's like a therapy session for Damien, especially the later interviewer, which I'll tell you about further on. But he's like hit these hard hitting questions that make Damien think back to like things that happened in his childhood that he has long since forgotten, that has shaped him to the person who he is now. Which there's also a scene in chapter 2 that I wrote down the line because it was a really good line. But basically, I digress again. So Damien, his sister, and him are sexually involved, but they're not sexually involved with anybody else. They only have sex with each other. And it's like Damien goes back to his first memory of when she pulled his pants down. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but yes, it's one of those situations, and they've been sexually involved ever since. It's a really weird, not necessarily weird. Well, no, it's weird, but it's a very awkward moment because it's just kind of thrown on you, and it's even O'Kane even like mentions how awkward it is, and like doesn't want to linger on the topic too much because Damien goes into deep detail about it, and O'Kane is like, okay, let's move on to something else, because it's like at first it's funny, but then it's not funny anymore. That's chapter 1. If you get past chapter 1, the rest of the book is so much better. Chapter 1 isn't a bad chapter. It's just very awkward, and it's kind of like it's trying to get you into the book. So chapter 1 is probably the most disturbing. I mean, it's disturbing. It's a disturbing book, but the rest is more so a lighthearted disturbing. It's done so in a lighthearted way. That first chapter though is like, yo, shit. Chapter 2, the sentence I was talking about. It's on page 34 of the paperback. I don't know what edition this is, but it's this edition. It may be on every edition. But on page 34, a kid, he at this point he's hiding in the antique wardrobe because he stole something. He's trying to hide from the security guards, and so he gets in this antique wardrobe. And they're outside, and this kid, this nosy kid who's like touching a bunch of stuff, and the mom's like, "Stop touching shit." He opens the doors, he peers inside, he's like, "Oh my god, it's so big," and then he looks, and Damian Lobo is like in the corner, just like, and it's like, yo, it scares the fuck out of this kid. Like the way that they describe the face, he's like he's wide eyed. He doesn't say anything. He just slowly closes it and leaves. And yeah, and so basically afterwards, Damien goes back to the interview with O'Kane. And he's like, I don't know. He talks about like how do these things affect you? And I can't. I wish I had. I don't feel like getting a page. But basically, I started the sentence at, I don't know for sure. Inexplicable things always happen to us when we're kids. Things we never tell anyone about. We grow up and we put it all behind us. And this is like my favorite line from the chapter. It hits on that concept that I was talking about earlier. Things that happens to us as kids that we forget about, but that shape us to who we are today. There's the experiences we encounter as adolescents. Actually, I'm reading from what I wrote. My favorite line from this chapter, it hits on a concept that I always think about. The experiences we encounter as adolescents that shape us into who we are. I wouldn't be surprised if the kid had an unnatural fear of dark corners or closets long after this incident, not knowing why he's scared of dark corners until seeing a therapist and the memory resurfaces for him to confront. And because I still remember we would go to this fair, it was like this huge slide way up, and you would get on the beanbag and you'll just slide down. It's so fast, it's so high up. But today you would never catch me on that. I have an unnatural fear of heights. So it's like, it is really it's just like fuck. Which is funny. People say, "Oh yeah, tall people are typically scared of heights." I'm 6'1". People try to say I'm 6'2", but I'm pretty certain I'm 6'1". But yeah. So like, but it's not my height that has bothered me. I think it just it has to do something with my past because I used to, even then I was still taller than the average kid. But now I'm just like, I will never get on heights. I hate airplanes. I hate amusement parks. I will never get on that fucking slide again. But yeah, that's what chapter 3 is kind of about. Chapter 2 is kind of about. And then chapter 3, excuse me, that's when you really start to see, or he really goes into detail about his conversations with O'Kane and Damien's Lobo's interactions with one another. And it's like it's just back and forth, back and forth. They're still in this antique wardrobe, and he's going in and out. He's in the interview, and then he hears, "Oh, this is when it's being transported over to the house." But like he's in there, and he's like, "Oh, I hear the packing tape," and then he's like, "Oh, well, tell me, like, why didn't you just try to break out thing?" He's like, "Well, and he gives his like really good interview explanations, but he goes back in and out of the real and mental world of his that where the interview is taking place, and he is just it's just so seamless and so smooth, and I have a huge appreciation and love for it. Chapter 5. Something I love about this story are the realistic random moments most writers would forget to include. Such as in chapter 4 when he went to use the bathroom but pissed in the sink so that the workers wouldn't hear the toilet flushing, or at the end of chapter 5 where Damien gets a random text but it's nothing important. Just a message from his bank about a chance to win a Samsung tablet, something I would consider a spam message. As writers, it's easy to get caught up in the fantastical details of your narrative that you forget to add those minute details that makes things realistic. These simplistic details that make unbelievable story believable, as we can relate to receiving spam messages or doing something to hide your presence. I think that kind of speaks for itself. But yeah, that's something that the story does really well. It does a really good job of lowering the level of anxiety, the level of like, I can't believe this dude is really doing this, with these small little scenes and things that he's doing. And then with the O'Kane show that's going on, it makes it more comforting with the level of like lightheartedness and I guess comedy that comes from the O'Kane show. And so it's just like, he becomes a likable character, and it kind of eases up on that. Chapter 6. So I wrote, something I began to notice about the narrative is that the interview segments are extremely important in making this story work. Having that relief of the intense and disturbing reality of a stranger living in the walls of someone's house makes the story easy to read through without disengaging. It lightens the intensity of the narrative while at the same time keeping the anxiety of Damien getting caught. It's a perfect balance and truly impressive. Again, I think that speaks for itself. And I think I already hit on it earlier. We talk about, Damien, or how well the O'Kane show is used to implement a level of relief. And because there's a lot of times where you're just like, holy shit, he's going to get caught. But he never does. Spoiler, he never does. The conversation with O'Kane and Damien has become seemingly toxic. I love how Damien creates the world of the TV studio and mentions O'Kane to be jealous of his rising to stardom, an interesting dynamic and somewhat comic relief for the seriousness of the situation. Um, I believe this was a chapter where Damien, oh, yeah, I really want to hit on this. It's when Damien starts to get, so like originally the O'Kane show was his escape from reality, a capitalist, um, affected worldview, where he was always beaten down on by capitalism. He talks about capitalism a lot, how he hates it, and he doesn't want to be political. But you could tell he's trying to escape it. But now that he's a ghost butler, and he's went on the Reddit forums, not necessarily the Reddit forums, but he went on the Reddit forums and had goes by the alias Ghost Butler. Newsrooms are talking about him. He's all the forums. Everybody's trying to figure out who Ghost Butler is, and it's showing O'Kane, his mental interviewer, being jealous of him because he's like, "Who do you think you are? You started on this show. You gonna fuck me for this? You think you're somebody? You're nothing without me." That kind of feel to it. It's really nice. It's really nice. Um, but yeah, he stops going. He stops going to the O'Kane show. And they become more toxic. And he talks about his yellow eyes and how he looks like a lizard man and all this shit. And it's just like, I mean, O'Kane is kind of creepy. He's like the generic old school side swoop kind of TV host who's kind of balding in the back, got thin hair, yellow eyes, and it's quite disgusting. Chapter 11, which was my favorite chapter. In chapter 11, you start to see him leave the O'Kane show, and it becomes a lot more serious. The show is no longer a form of relief. Damien is living in this house. He's living in the world. He's no longer escaping from it. He's living in it. But in a way, he's kind of escaping from it by living in it, but is living in another person's house as a supernatural presence, but isn't supernatural. So he's kind of found his own escape in reality. I didn't think it would do well with losing that, but now looking back on it, the writer has made Damien a likable character. We don't mind it anymore. We're accustomed to it. We're trying to see his living situation now, and I think that it was a perfect way to transition between the two. Yeah, it's like the reality flipped on itself. He was trying to escape the world by going to the Kane show, and now he's trying to escape the O'Kane show by living in the world. Now, O'Kane is this the same abuser that the capitalist society that he was living in was. What brought him back to the real world was his obsession with the presence of Lucia's life. He became more real yet incorporeal at the same time. And when I say that, because Lucia sees him as a spirit of his dead brother, her dead younger brother, it reminded me of Schrodinger's cat. The Schrodinger's cat kind of goes into basically, you put a cat in a box with a unstable nuclear substance, I think. Then you put it in a box with a cat. If you close the box and you leave and you come back, until you open the box, you don't know if the cat is alive or dead. So therefore, the cat is living like a half existence, because the cat is neither truly alive or dead until you open the box, whether or not it's talking or not. So it's like an imagination task, I believe. I know that was a rough explanation of it, so I apologize if it's not the best. But that's what it made me think of. In the earlier chapter, Damien was under the bed, and he mentions this half existence where he's up under the bed. Neither there nor not there. If you look from the eyes of Lucia and her husband, you don't know that he's up under the bed. And he talks about like this confined dimension where our fears lay, where the imagination and reality um coincide. Like if you're going walking down to the basement or something, and you feel like there's something in the basement, but there's no hard proof that something's in the basement. And unless you go down the basement and look to see if something's there, you don't know if something's there. Kids, when they're scared of the closet, um, they don't want to go to the closet because their imagination puts something in the closet. But until they open the closet, they don't know whether something is there or not. And even if you look in the closet and see that there's nothing there, you close the closet back, that same fear, that same anxiety may show up. And it's kind of similar to Schrodinger's cat. The cat is living a half existence. Until you open the box, you don't know the cat is there or not. Later on in the story, the wife and daughter come back. They went out of town. They come back. There's a whole mess. The mother's like, holy shit, the house is clean. But then they're like, oh, this must be the spirit that you mentioned of your brother. And she's like, no, there's no spirit. And she was like, didn't you say there was a spirit? And it's like, nah, it wasn't a spirit. And so at that point, you're left to believe that she knows that there's someone in the house, but you don't know for certain. And that very ending. Oh well, before that happens, so you remember well, I don't know if I actually mentioned it, but there's a second interviewer named Anaki something like Gobalano or some shit. He prefers.
My apologies. When I say he, I'm referring to Damian Lobo.
The stoicness or the but he misses the celebrityism of that O'Kane provides. So one day, he goes to the interview with Anaki and he looks and he's like, you got yellow eyes. O'Kane, is that you up under there? O'Kane wears Anaki's skin. Tells Damien, like, you like this shit. I know you like it. Don't fake it. You want me here. Now you got the best of both worlds. You got the stoicness of Anaki, but you got me up under here running shit. And I guess it turns Damien on. He's like, shit, fuck it. If you cool with that, I'm cool with it. So really the only loser is Anaki because he was fucking filleted, had O'Kane wrapped in his skin and shit. I said filleted. I don't know, it's flayed or flayed, whatever you call it. There's this really nice scene. Basically, Damien is like, Lucia needs me. She needs me to comfort her. And so he slowly it's done so perfectly. It's very creepy, but it was like it's so smooth and slow, like you can see it like in a movie where it's like the dude, he creeps out the closet, but he does so like seductively and sincerely. Then he takes his clothes off, takes his pants off, and he climbs in the bed after sleeping Lucia. And what he's hearing, not what she's saying, but what he's hearing, he hears it say, you arrived. Damien asked, arrived where? And the voice said, wherever you want to be. And that was all. It's funny because even before he shaves his beard, he's been looking rough. So he shaved his beard, trimmed it nice, whatever. He's like getting ready for a date or whatever. The scroungy dude climbs into bed after this girl is asleep. Her dead husband just, oh. But okay, the husband is dead. So the husband done died. That's why the house is a mess. And this skinny behind old looking ghost dude climbs in the bed behind you and just holds you bare naked. His schlong up against your back. It's like, at that moment, I knew there was something wrong with Damien. And you'll understand because, like, throughout the whole book, I knew something was wrong with Damien. But it was like, when that happened, I was like, oh, he's fucked up. I thought he was just like medium high fucked up. No, he's fucked up, So it was just it's a really good book. I definitely encourage people to read it. It's really good. Also give him a review. I'm actually gonna write him a review on Goodreads at some point. Because it's a really good book. I really loved it. And honestly, I think that he should get a lot more recognition than he does. I know it's actually pushing closer to, if not 30 minutes. So I'm probably not going to talk about this book. I'll talk about it later, probably when I finish it. So, but yeah, that's that. Pieces, deuces, whatever you want to call it. I still ain't got no intro, no outro. So, like and subscribe. I guess that's my outro. All right, peace.